Guitar Electrics 2, Screening and Noise versus Sound. This video is part of a series of videos where we go through the circuits in an electric guitar, component by component, explaining how it works and how it should be wired. By the end of this series of videos, you should be able to repair, modify, or design your own electrics for an electric guitar. I'll put a link to the playlist down below in the description. Originally, I was going to squeeze this subject into another video in the guitar electrics range. However, it's such an important subject, I decided to give it its own video. But there's not a great deal to say, so hopefully this video will be quite short. Right, before I take a look at what screening is and what screening does, let's just define the difference between noise and sound. And very simply, sound is what you want and noise is what you don't want. Now, outside of what we're talking about today, there are exceptions with noise, as some people will want to purposely produce noise, as you can use it in your music, or it can even be used for therapeutic reasons. So you can find noise generators or controllers in some synthesizers, and you can find them in your DAW or audio editor, and even in some VSTs. But when we're discussing the signal coming out of a guitar or a microphone, sound is something you want and noise is something you don't want. Because this is so important, when you buy good quality audio equipment, it usually has an SNR number or signal to noise ratio displayed in the specification. And this is displayed in dB or decibels. And generally, the higher the number, the better the quality. Above 70 decibels is usually really good, and below that, the lower it gets, the worse it gets. If you've not come across sound to noise ratios before, it can be very confusing, because sound to noise and signal to noise are used almost interchangeably. However, sound to noise is very specific, whereas signal to noise can refer to audio equipment or photograph equipment or even broadband and Wi-Fi. Here's a very simple and crude demonstration of sound to noise ratios. Here I've got two tracks. On one track I've got clean audio. And one with noise on. If I play both the tracks at equal volume, then that's a sound to noise ratio of 1:1. If I now lower the noise to about half, this will give me a sound to noise ratio of 2:1. Here it is at a ratio of about 10:1. And even at this level, the noise is intolerable. So you really need the lowest possible sound to noise ratio. Or, best of all, no noise at all. If you're wondering why I chose that particular tune for the test, It's because you can hear the silence between the notes quite clearly when there is silence. I've probably gone deeper than I need to go on the subject of noise in this video, but I could probably do an entire video just on noise. But for the sake of this video, all you need to know is that when it comes to the signal coming out of a guitar, noise is bad, so you don't want it. However, it's very difficult to avoid because it's all around you in the form of electromagnetic waves, which will try and affect the sound coming out of your guitar. The most common kind of noise guitarists come across is mains hum, which sounds like this. Or, in some countries, it sounds like this, which is a slightly higher frequency. It's between 50 and 60 Hz basically. The reason we call this mains hum is because this is the frequency your mains electricity is modulated at. So not only is this frequency being fed into all your equipment and everything that's powered through the mains, but it's in the air all around you in the form of electromagnetic waves. In fact, not only is mains hum all around you, but all sorts of electromagnetic frequencies. Here's just a few I found just by moving within a couple of feet of where I'm making this video. I'm using an electromagnetic radiation tester to show where the electromagnetic waves are coming from. This isn't the perfect test because there's frequencies that will trigger the alarm that won't affect the sound of your guitar. However, there's other frequencies that won't trigger the alarm but will affect the sound of your guitar. But what this test allows me to demonstrate is that there's something all around you that's invisible to the naked eye but can affect the sound of your guitar. And this is why screening is so important, because when it's done correctly, screening can prevent the outside interference from affecting the sound of your guitar. What is screening and how do we use it? There's nothing really complicated or technical about screening. It's literally just an electrically conductive material that you can put between the outside noise pollution and the guitar signal. And when you're talking about a guitar, we can think of it this way. Coming out of your guitar, there's just two wires. One is the signal wire, and the second wire is the ground or earth. And we want to use the ground or earth as the screening wire. And this means everywhere from the pickup right the way to the amplifier, we want to try and make sure that the signal wire is surrounded by the ground or earth. The easiest way I can illustrate this is by using a guitar lead. If you take a look at the wire used for guitar leads, there's a central core, which will be your signal wire, and then braided around the outside of this wire is the earth wire, which is the screening. We call this kind of wire coaxial, where you've got a central core and the second wire is wrapped around it to form shielding. Now, you might think that the interference can still get through because there's gaps in the braiding. However, This isn't true because the interference is attracted to the ground or earth wire. So the interference is drawn to the screening. Where you've got a metal jack plug, this will also be connected to the earth, ground or screening wire to make sure the screening is continuous from end to end of the lead. I've chosen a guitar lead to explain this because most people are familiar with a guitar lead. However, in the ideal world, we really want the screening to go on beyond the lead and into the guitar. So everywhere the signal wire goes, we want that to be surrounded by screening. And this is where many guitar makers fall down. They just don't put enough screening in. And the cheaper your guitar, the worse this problem tends to be. Here we've got scratch plates of two guitars that are the same style but different makes. The scratch plate without the electrics is a genuine Fender one, and they've virtually covered the whole scratch plate with an aluminium screening film, whereas the copy has just got a small area of screening, which really isn't sufficient because you want it to go around the pickups as well if you can. But whilst the screening's not very extensive on the cheap copy, it does demonstrate how the earth or ground wire gets connected to the screening, because you can see how everywhere a potentiometer or a switch connects to the scratch plate, it forms a connection between the screening and the earth on the electrical circuit. If you want to upgrade the screening on your guitar, it's really easy to do. You can buy screening film or tape, and it comes in multiple materials. Copper and aluminium are the most common ones, and you can get screening or conductive paint, which is usually graphite based. And many guitar makers use this, so sometimes it isn't obvious your guitar's screened because they've used the paint. Personally, I prefer to use the film or the tape, which is just like applying sticky back plastic, though it can be a bit awkward. Whichever way you do it, you've just got to line the areas where the electrics seem most vulnerable to external interference. And even though the wood does offer some protection, it's always a good idea to line as much as you can. Now, I'm well aware that there's thousands of people out there who never need to upgrade their screening, and they're getting by perfectly well with the provided screening in the guitar. And that's great. Most of the time, if for example you're playing live, you'd never hear any noise coming through the guitar system because of crowd noise. But if you're recording really high quality sound, or if you're in a recording studio, you'll be listening to every recording in detail, and you'll be listening for background noise. And in that circumstance, good screening might be really useful or even essential. If you ever rewire a guitar or build a guitar or do any big repairs like changing pickups, it's always worthwhile checking the screening whilst you're there and maybe upgrading it. Whenever I build a guitar, I always line every cavity with screening, and you can see my preferred material is copper. And I don't know of any advantages or disadvantages of using copper, but I always get good results from it. Before I finish up, it's worth me mentioning that noise pollution is always evolving with technology. Years ago, it was just mains hum, and I'd sometimes have problems with taxi drivers' radios. However, more recently, it became mobile phones as well. And the latest problem I'm seeing more of than anything else is chatter from USB devices, because people use USB sound cards and a lot of audio equipment is USB enabled, and USB produces this kind of a sound. Screening can either reduce or eliminate this kind of USB chatter. However, if you've still got this noise going on and you've got a well screened guitar, it may be coming in through the mains or a power supply. And if this is the case, you'll want to put ferrite rings on everything you can, all the power supplies and mains leads. These are only cheap, but they reduce high frequency noise. And if any of your audio equipment is connected directly to a computer, you might, as a last resort, have to use a power isolator, which, as the name suggests, it stands between the power supply in your computer and the device, so your device gets a clean power supply. The problem with these is they're not compatible with every computer and every device. This one I use with a Donner Arena 2000 and it works perfectly. However, when I tried to use it with a Line 6 Helix rack, my computer just couldn't see it, so it wouldn't work. Anywho, that was just an afterthought, as this video is meant to be just about screening, but I thought I'd better mention this in case anyone was having this problem. And that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, and if you'd like to see more like it, please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new videos. And if you're looking for some free guitar lessons and some professionally written courses, you can find them at www.ebooksforguitar.com, and you can also download the PDF ebooks that go with the courses completely free as well. And before I sign off, I have to give a real special thanks to my channel members. Without their support, I couldn't keep making these videos. And if you'd like to support the channel and can afford it, please consider becoming a channel member. But don't worry if you can't afford it or you don't want to, just watching the videos is enough. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, bye for now.